Tonight, we begin with a question for the president. If you truly believe that the 448-page Mueller report totally exonerated you, as you so often claim, if you are sitting on 448 pages of pure exoneration, why did you need your former staffer to write a letter clearing your name? That's what we want to know after new reporting tonight from the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. According to the Journal, within a day of the release of the Mueller report last month, President Donald Trump sought to have former White House counsel Don McGahn declare that he didn't consider the president's 2017 directive that he seek Robert Mueller's dismissal to be obstruction of justice. But Mr. McGahn rebuffed the request. The Times adds that White House officials, quote, asked at least twice in the past month for McGahn to make that public statement. NBC News has since confirmed this reporting. Now, it seems we have finally found the one person in Donald Trump's orbit who, while he was perfectly willing to put his reputation on the line by associating himself professionally and in history with Donald Trump, would not risk being disbarred for Donald Trump. It's a pretty low bar. And it doesn't mean that Don McGahn is in the clear just yet. Before this news broke, House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler threatened to hold McGahn in contempt if he doesn't comply with a subpoena to come before the committee.
We've subpoenaed McGahn, and we're expecting him to show up on the 21st. And if he doesn't, he'll be subject to contempt, unless he has a court order telling he can't, which I don't think he would get. And he has to respect the rule of law like everybody else.
This threat of contempt is just one example of the Democratic gloves coming off. House Democrats, fed up with the Trump administration's attempts to stonewall congressional oversight, are mounting an increasingly aggressive campaign to compel the president and the White House officials under him to comply, as the Constitution demands. Tonight, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in the House subpoenaed the Treasury Department and the IRS for 6 years of Donald Trump's personal and business tax returns. Chairman Richard Neal said, while I do not take this step lightly, I believe this action gives us the best opportunity to succeed and obtain the requested material. Chairman Neal gave the agencies until May 17th to produce Trump's tax records. He's expected to go to court after that. Subpoenas are one of a growing number of tools Democratic lawmakers are using or considering to force the Trump administration's hands. There's the money threat. House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff floated a new idea for enforcing subpoenas. Fine officials who ignore them.
I think it's far more practical to consider levying individual fines on the person, not on the office, until they comply. The courts use that practice. I think it's quite successful.
And you're talking about a big number.
Yes. Yes. Well, you could fine someone $25,000 a day until they comply, and that will probably get their attention.
And can you do that?
We can do that. We can do that. But if there is going to be this across-the-board stonewalling, we're going to have to consider extraordinary remedies.
Another financial option on the table, withholding funds until officials comply with subpoenas. This week, the House Oversight Committee threatened to withhold the salaries of Interior Department officials who have blocked lawmakers from interviewing agency employees for an investigation into Secretary David Bernhardt. Then there's contempt of Congress. The big news this week was that the House Judiciary Committee voted to hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt over his failure to produce the full unredacted Mueller report. Now, Chairman Nadler has endorsed the idea of bundling together several contempt resolutions against Trump associates before having lawmakers vote on them. And the biggest Democratic play of all may be the hardest to actually make happen. Today, Jerry Nadler, along with Congressman Ted Deutsch and Eric Swalwell, introduced the No President is Above the Law Act. The legislation would pause the statute of limitations for any federal offense committed by a sitting president, whether it was committed before or during the president's term of office. As Chairman Nadler put it, no person can be permitted to evade accountability for their actions just because they happen to be president. The presidency is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. Leading off our discussion tonight are two Democratic members of Congress, Congresswoman Val Demings of Florida. She's a member of the Judiciary and Intelligence Committees, and Congressman Dan Kildee of Michigan, and he's a member of the House Ways and Means Committee. Thank you both for being here. You're at a disadvantage. You're not at the table here with us, so I'm going to go to you first, Congresswoman Demings. You used to be the sheriff of Orlando, Florida. You used to be a law enforcement officer. Have you ever in your career heard of somebody going to court, being exonerated, being acquitted at trial, or completely exonerated of whatever the crime was, and then going back and asking a witness in that trial to write them a letter stipulating to their exoneration?
Good evening, Joy. It's great to be with you. And as you've just stated, look, I spent 27 years in law enforcement, served as the chief of police in Orlando. And one thing I learned many, many years ago is that nobody is above the law. The Constitution of the United States gives Congress the authority to provide oversight over the executive branch as an equal branch of government. While the president obviously has no respect for what the law says, what the Constitution says, or the oversight responsibility that we have, I can tell you, Chairman Nadler, the Judiciary Committee, and Congress, at least on the Democratic side, we are serious about holding him accountable. And to ask a staffer and thank God for Mr. McGahn, who refused to violate the law or lie for the president, refused to write that letter. But no, I've never heard or seen anything like that, even after 25 years on the police department.
Yeah, and I'm tempted to give McGahn, kudos for, refusing to commit something that, in the end might get him disbarred, right? Donald Trump asks people to commit abrogations of decency and of their own ethics all the time, but he considered it. According to the New York Times, McGahn actually considered doing it. He considered saying that Trump didn't obstruct justice, and then the Mueller report came out. Here's the quote. Mr. McGahn initially entertained the White House request, but after the report was released detailing the range of actions Mr. Trump took to try and impede the inquiry, Mr. McGahn declined to put out a statement. And then the New York Times goes on to report that Donald Trump was angry and believed that McGahn had showed disloyalty by telling investigators for the special counsel that Trump's attempts to maintain control over the Mueller investigation. The chairman of the committee you serve on, Jerry Nadler, said this means McGahn has to testify. But, if he comes before your committee, wouldn't it perhaps be worth asking him whether or not the fact that he considered actually going ahead and doing this, and then the Mueller report came out, leads him to believe that the Mueller report actually shows that Donald Trump committed obstruction of justice?
And let me say this. As you well know, we voted this week to hold the Attorney General in contempt of Congress. We expect Mr. McGahn to appear before our committee on the 21st of this month. If he does not appear, respect the subpoena that he has received, we can go down that same path for him. And you better believe when he comes before the committee, we are going to ask him, after the Mueller report showed at least 10 instances where the president either obstructed justice or attempted to obstruct justice, tried to get witnesses to lie for him, threatened witnesses, just was members of his staff, destroyed emails and other evidence. We're going to ask him why on earth would he even consider writing a letter that we all know would not have been the truth.
Yeah. Let me come to you, Congressman Kildee, on the taxes, because a lot of people do not understand why these officials in Treasury and in the IRS are being given so much time. There's a story in the New York Times that says that an aide to the committee that you serve on, the Ways and Means Committee, suggested on Friday, this is quoting the Times, that though the panel is confident in the merits of the chairman's argument that the tax records should be turned over, Mr. Neal and lawyers in the House ultimately decided that going straight to court to try and enforce the provision carried too much risk. They feared that a judge could simply throw out the case for lack of standing, essentially rendering the use of the tax code provision unenforceable whenever the executive branch objects. And so, in other words, that Donald Trump could actually succeed to making it impossible to ever enforce the provision. Is that why the delay is happening?
Look, this is uncharted territory, and so we are doing everything we can to get this right. And the chairman has been really clear on this. We're going to take a methodical approach. The problem that we saw in 6103 is that we've never had the IRS say no.
Right.
And it was never even anticipated back in 1924 that there would ever be a question as to whether the IRS would comply with a legitimate request from the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee for a tax return. So issuing the subpoena gives us the tool that we need in the event that they don't respond positively to the subpoena to go and enforce that subpoena. So there's never really an enforcement mechanism built into 6103 because nobody
No one
ever
ever did it
expected.
before. Well, that's
nobody,
pretty
and
much-
nobody had ever expected that they
Yeah.
wouldn't comply.
Well, that's everything about the Trump administration. What about this question of withholding the salaries of the people who are refusing to comply with these subpoenas? Could the House Ways and Means Committee simply cut off the salaries of the IRS commissioner, cut off the salaries of the Treasury director, and just start not paying people until they comply?
So my preference is to use the other branch of government, the judiciary, to enforce a legitimate order.
You trust the judiciary that Trump has seated with, 100 of his personally picked or the right wing's handpicked judges from the Federal Society?
Well, ultimately, we have a system of government that depends on separation of powers.
So you wouldn't want to just say, listen, you're not getting your paycheck until you comply. That'd probably make him comply.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't given that very much thought, but my first inclination is to let's follow the rule of law. Let's use the system that has served this country for a long time, knowing that it has flaws, and one of the flaws is that presidents get to appoint judges that sometimes are biased in their favor. But we have to, I think, give that a chance. But, you know, the people back home that I listen to, they're exhausted by this. They are absolutely exhausted by this. And I just want to acknowledge that because it's important for us to point out that we really should be focusing a lot more of our attention on the troubles that people have in their
Let
home
me ask you on
families.
that, because I want to ask both of you, you members of Congress, you guys are both from states that are obviously pivotal and important electorally, but also they're human beings living there, okay, just to be blunt. People in Michigan, if they don't pay their bills, they are going to have real consequences. They can't escape from the consequences of getting a summons. You get a jury summons, you better go. You end up, you're summoned to court, you can't just say, I'm not going.
Right.
So I wonder if the people in your district are connecting with the fact that this president is saying that he doesn't have to do the things they would have to do.
Yeah.
They would be held to account if they attempted to not pay their taxes or not respond to a court order.
They want us to focus on the problems that they face every day, but they also do really want us to make sure that the rules apply to everyone. And even if sometimes that puts us in a position where the politics sort of get in the way, we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
We swore an oath to the Constitution.
Absolutely.
We have to enforce it.
Yeah, and Congresswoman Demings, I want to play you what Adam Schiff had to say about, because Donald Jr., Donald Jr. is not even in the White House. He is not a White House official. He's not the President of the United States. This is an ordinary citizen out there in the world, just like any of us, saying, I don't have to comply with the subpoena. When I'm subpoenaed, I don't have to listen to that at all. That is extraordinary because it says something about the ability to confer lawlessness on someone else by a president. Here is Adam Schiff talking about Don Jr. and even Ivanka.
Well, I think Don Jr. has the same problem the president does, like father, like son, which is, and the president's lawyers have been quite blunt about this, they feared putting him in front of anyone under oath with a president who is incapable of telling the truth for more than a minute was legal malpractice. And Don Jr.'s lawyers may feel very much the same about him.
What do you think are the chances that Congress will call Ivanka Trump?
I don't know. There's certainly relevant testimony that she may be able to offer on things like Moscow Trump Tower. And so I wouldn't exclude anyone merely because they're family of the president.
You know, Congresswoman Demings, I'm quite sure the people who were dragged before the Watergate hearings didn't want to go. I'm pretty sure Hillary Clinton didn't want to sit for 11 hours and answer questions about Benghazi. When you get subpoenaed, you got to go. I mean, have you ever taken someone into custody back in Orlando when you were a law enforcement officer that was willing to go, that was happy to go, that wanted to go and go into court?
And, Joy, let's think about it. I think Mueller was pretty clear on that had it not been for the fact that the investigation was about a sitting president, any other man or woman would have been indicted. And so you're absolutely correct. I don't believe, number one, I do question that because I'm not sure the president can do anything and not be indicted. And that's just Val Demings talking, let me say that. But also, for the president's son, for the president, for the attorney general, for the Treasury Secretary and others to absolutely just refuse and ignore a subpoena, to refuse and ignore the authority, the oversight authority that Congress has, is totally unacceptable. It's acceptable for them. Certainly it would be unacceptable for someone in my district.
Yeah, absolutely. At least in a democracy, it would be. And that is what we are. So, Congressman Val Demings, Congressman Dan Kildee, thank you both very much. Have a great Mother's Day weekend. Appreciate it.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.